Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel. I'm super excited to be here today. I have a swap today between Tombow and Waffle Flower Crafts, and I learned some tips from Shannon the other day in the Waffle Flower Garden on Facebook about how to no line color with Tombow dual brush pens really easily. Just a couple of steps. Super easy. And I am not great at no line coloring. This is about the best that I've ever done. So I'm going to share those tips with you. I'm going to link to the Facebook group, and so you can watch Shannon do it because she's a pro. But for now, let me show you what I'm working with. I have the Tombow dual brush pen organizer here. It holds, I think, 96 markers. You can see I'm kind of working on my collection here. I have two of the new sets from Tombow, and I will link those down below so you can check out all the new colors in the sets. And these pens over here are the ones I'm going to be using today. I also have a really fine paintbrush and my distress sprayer, and I'm going to be working on my Waffle Flower water media mat. The stamp set that I'm going to be using today is called Tulips by Waffle Flower. It's illustrated by Carla Jodwin. I am going to use my Misty and the Like a Pro Waffle Flower gray ink. It's actually really perfect for no line coloring, and I like gray because I like cool undertones for my coloring. So when I Copic color, I usually use the cool grays as my shadows. So for no line coloring, I like to use a gray for the outline. And it's just dark enough to be able to see, but it's light enough to blend in as you're coloring. Okay, I am going to take the brush tip of the Tombow dual brush pens, and I'm going to outline one of the tulips here. So I'm just going over the lines of the stamp. The great thing about floral stamps by Waffle Flower illustrated by Carla Jodwin is that they have lots of detail. So you'll just be basically tracing over the lines that have been already created for you by the stamp. And that dual brush pen tip is very fine and detailed and allows you to really get fine lines. I'm going to take a lighter color, and I'm going to use kind of that flicking motion that you use with Copic markers. I'm going to flick up from the bottom and down from the top. That's going to be my mid-tone color there. And now I'm going to spray a little bit of water on the water media mat and take that paintbrush. Now here's the tip that Shannon shared that really helped me kind of break through to the aha moment. You're basically using no water at all. Like, it is the tiniest little droplet on the end of that tiny little brush, but it's just enough to activate the Tombow dual brush pen and to get the ink to flow from the bottom and the top towards the center to meet and to fill in those white areas that we left. So I'm more used to Copic coloring. So what I do when I Copic color is I start with a light color and I leave a small patch of white where I haven't colored anything at all, and that's going to be my highlight area. You're doing the same thing here. You're leaving that center area completely white until you come in with the water, and that makes it the lightest part of the flower. And it's just such a pretty effect, and it's so easy to achieve. So I really don't know anything about blending and shading with these markers yet. This is all I know. It has a really pretty watercolor effect that I really haven't been able to achieve with anything else. So you can see I brought the stamp set in on my right hand side. That is to make sure that I'm coloring the tulips the right color and I'm not crossing over into a leaf. I think it's easier for me to see on that stamp set than it is just in the gray lines. Sometimes I look at something and I'm not sure if it's a leaf or a flower, and that's when having the stamp set right next to you is really helpful. I think what was intimidating at first was those large open petals, and I love the way they turned out. I love that kind of lighter watercolor effect in the center of the petal. Okay, now I'm going to turn to the leaves. So I have just two colors. Again, I have a dark green and then a light green. I'll list them all below, the ones that I used. And I am going to do the same exact process. So I am going to, one leaf at a time, go in here and outline in that dark color and just draw right over the lines of the stamp. And you can see even that is just kind of pretty as it is. gets even prettier when you flick with that kind of Copic flick motion where you flick from the bottom to the top and then the top to the bottom, leaving that middle area open and white. And that's what you're gonna, again, fill in with the water. Okay, now I have that leaf all done, and you can see that the light is coming from kind of that upper right-hand side, and it's resting on the leaf there, and that's why that open area is going to be the brightest area where the light would be shining on the leaf. Anything that has a line is where things are a little bit darker. And so I do go over those lines with the tip of the paintbrush and the water because that helps blend it out and make it softer so it's not quite so harsh. So that's the other thing you're doing. Besides kind of filling in that middle area, you are taking a little bit of water and going over every little bit line because it really does soften them up. And I just think you could absolutely just color with these markers. When I was doing the 2 tones of green, I really liked the way they looked, even just colored in. But the water adds just such a pretty artistic look, I think. Something that's a little bit different, especially if you're used to coloring with like Copic markers where you can't really achieve that effect as easily. So I did have a couple of leaves where they were smaller and I used a little bit too much water and there was a little bit too much blending. That's okay. Let it dry and then you can go back in with that lighter color to achieve that lighter look. Okay, I'm taking a third color and I am just swiping from the bottom up of these tulips because sometimes the bottom of those flowers have like almost an orangey hue on the pink ones, and I love the way that looks in person. So I did that, and I'm also going to instead of doing direct to paper, I am going to color on the mat itself and pick up a little bit of that color for the stamen of the tulips. There are just a couple little dots here that I tried to leave open. You can see on that bottom tulip there, I did leave them open enough that I could color them in with this color. If you are not sure about how the color is going to look, I say go with a lighter color first. I did like this light color, but it was harder to see. So I did end up trying a darker color, but you know, go light first and then go darker because it's easy to, intensify the color. It's harder to lighten it up once you've laid it down. Especially because this is Canson Bristol smooth paper, and so it's not like it's watercolor paper necessarily, and it doesn't hold tons and tons of water, and you don't want to, work it so much that it starts pilling on you. And that's why Shannon recommends using such a small amount of water. You could work on a watercolor paper, but this paper, because it's that Bristol and it's that smooth top, it does flow really easily. It makes that Tombow dual brush pen just glide across the paper. I'm going to do the same thing on these blue tulips that I colored, where I'm going to add a little bit of yellow on the base of the tulip. And I decided that that was really pretty, but I wanted kind of like an even more dramatic effect. So I did come in with some green here and just add that in as well. And I love the 2 tones of the colors next to each other. I think they're really, really pretty. Great thing about tulips is they come in like a rainbow of colors. Now I'm going to take some purple tape and just temporarily adhere the dies down around the outside of my tulips. The other great thing about the Waffle flower stamps is that they all come with coordinating dies, so you can cut them all out. Of course, you could do some masking and layering and things like that on a 1-layer card. I really love the dimension that these dies allow you to achieve on top of your card. Okay, now I have a yellow Tombow dual brush pen. This time I'm taking a large round brush because I want to create a background and I want to just paint swipes all across an A2 card there. So I did apply the dual brush pen to the media mat and then spray some water on top and then just swipe it across just to create a really artistic looking background. I am going to add some more water and some more color, and this time I am going to flick bits of color, and those are going to be more pronounced and brighter. It's hard to tell in the video, but so you have this light wash of color in the background and then these stronger flicks of color on top. Did decide to heat set this because I didn't want to wait for it to dry, and the heat setting actually flattened it out too, which was really, really nice. I did decide to cut that watercolor panel out of the Waffle Flower Micro Grid Panel Die 1. I'm going to pop it up on some foam squares and then lay it on top of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel. And I just like the way that those two layers look together, and then I have the flowers on top. Next, I'm going to stamp a sentiment from the Tulips stamp set. I'm stamping the Happy Mother's Day sentiment. I'm going to stamp it on vellum. I'm going to use some anti-static powder tool and some Versamark ink to stamp this sentiment. And then I'm going to pour some embossing powder on top. And once I heat set that, I am going to cut it down into a strip that I can lay on my panel. Now it's time to adhere my tulips. So I am going to adhere the blue cluster of flowers straight down to the panel die, and then I am going to pop up the pink cluster of flowers on top, which again, that's the whole point of die cutting them out, is so that you have that option. I personally like one flat and one popped up because I think it gives it lots of interest, and then there's lots of depth and dimension. So one is further away and one is closer to you, and I really love how they look next to the heat embossed sentiment as well. Okay, next I am going to use some glitter enamel dots from Waffle Flower. These are called Stardust, and I love the white glittered enamel dots there. It seemed like they were just perfect for this card, and they actually work with lots of cards because of the white. They also have a silver in the pack, and those are really easy to use as well. So I'm just going to sprinkle a couple of those around. Love that they're self-adhesive too, so you don't have to mess with liquid glue, and that is pretty much it. So you can see in the photo there, I did add some twine to the base of the stems of the tulips, but other than that, I kept everything really simple so that the focus was on all that pretty coloring that we did. And again, super, super simple. I used maybe 2-3 colors per flower or leaf, and just a tiny bit of water, and I really love the way that they look and that watercolor effect you can achieve. If you're interested in any of the supplies that I used today, they will all be linked down below. I want to thank you so much for stopping by today. Have a wonderful day.